Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 109 of the Podcana podcast. This week, we are joined by the one and only Mr. Frank Karsten. Frank has recently returned from the Disney Lorcana World Championship, where, of course, he qualified. He played through the entire event. We got to see Frank highlighted mainly in the super sealed portion, where I have to say that first round against Zan was exhilarating to watch, and I imagine exhilarating to play as well. It seemed like there was so many really interesting, crucial decision points throughout that round. So, yeah, Frank, welcome back onto the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, feeling good. It's been an intense weekend at the World Championship, but I'm slowly recovering here back home and catching up on everything. And yeah, as you said, the sealed deck portion, I hope showed that there's a lot of depth and play in this format, and that the matches can be quite exciting and back and forth with all kinds of small decisions and like combat math involved, which I always enjoy a lot.
For sure, yeah. No, it was a great watch. Um, this week we are also going to be talking about some of the top performing deck lists from this past weekend's tournament. PPG or Pro Play Games had their big like summit event, I think it's called, where they did lots of different Lorcana things. There was a 10K, there was a 15K, and then there was also a Ravensburger sponsored event within Italy, the Galactus Grand Prix. So we'll be talking through some of those decks, and then, of course, to finish it off, we'll also be getting Frank's opinion and his thoughts on the DLC Season 2 announcements, which we discussed with Ed last week as well. But first of all, yeah, I mean, let's kind of maybe have an overview from you, Frank, about your experience at the World Championship, traveling over, maybe how you guys were accommodated, maybe some of the stuff in the lead up to actually playing the event, because I know you traveled over a little bit earlier to practice with the team, right?
Yeah, so I prepared together with Dinkham Pham, the eventual winner, and Kurt Spice, and also the rest of team world class cards. Many of them already gathered in Orlando like a week before the World Championship in sort of a boot camp to play lots of games, do a bunch of testing, and get ready. Certainly worked out perfectly for DKP, who ended up taking the trophy. As for myself, I only arrived like 2 days beforehand. Had some like personal commitments in the way that prevented me from getting there earlier. But like in the weeks before, chatted a bunch with DKP and Kurt. Played some games online, and yeah, it was like a great experience overall. In the end, we actually registered three different lineups for the constructed portion, but it also made some sense because all of them kind of played to our own strengths. Like Kurt was just crushing everyone with Churna dogs, and had a lineup that maximized that deck. Whereas yeah, DKP and I were just not able to win with the deck as much. Likewise, DKP felt really comfortable in the Ruby Sapphire Mirror. It's a deck that he has been playing for so long, and like he registered a lineup where he would often be able to face that and come out ahead. And yeah, meanwhile, I did not feel as confident in those matchups or with those decks, so I just registered a more well obvious or flexible lineup. But yeah, despite all those differences, we all helped each other, gave some feedback on our decks, and supported each other throughout the event. As for yeah, how we were accommodated, they definitely made it into an awesome, let's say, VIP experience, where they flew us out to Disney World, put us up in a nice hotel, and The venue was, but everything was very well taken care of. Got some nice goodies, and yeah, made it into a very special, memorable experience. Even though I didn't make day two, it was still an awesome event that I hope many other players will have a chance to experience next year. Looking forward to seeing Moyen at the World Championship next year in particular. Um, but yeah, like we also got to go to the parks on the Monday after, and that was yeah also like a lot of fun to get some nice memories with the other players, with the casters, and yeah, just an awesome weekend, and like being able to celebrate with DKP after he took it down. That yeah, it makes it into an awesome experience.
Yeah, that's super super cool. I think it really showcases the way you guys were treated, as well as like you said, Frank. Even though you didn't maybe perform as well as you'd hoped, I feel like this is a common thing from Lorcana events where we all just still really enjoy being around other members of the community, having fun even after the event, and yeah, it's like one of my favorite things about going on any Lorcana trip and going to any event is it's like all of the stuff that happens in between playing the games as well is always oftentimes quite special. So sorry, Moin, I think you were going to say something.
It was just because before the tournament we had our Frank and I had talked a lot about like the theory behind maybe the value that you can gain by having a more flexible strategy where you can kind of make your ban uh, dependent on the opposing lineup and sometimes even play draw as Frank was able to calculate. I wasn't. Um, so I was just extremely curious how you felt like it actually turned out when you then sat down and played those constructed rounds. Did you like were you happy with the strategy that you went with, or would you have rather maybe had like a clear ban in mind?
So yeah, you are right that I ultimately submitted like a lineup that was leaning towards banning something like Sapphire in particular, but that was still like not all in on that and somewhat flexible. The day before, like we got all the deck lists, so then I think I was one of the few people with like a flexible ban lineup. So I went over like all the decks and like wrote down like an entire cheat sheet of like what I would plan to ban depending on the die roll. And usually it was Sapphire, but like I don't know, one third of the time it was something gonna be something different. um, I felt that this was a reasonable approach in theory, and there were also certainly some lineups that opponents presented that were somewhat exploitable, that I could target with like a different ban strategy. But in the end, with the way the metagame actually shook out, uh, I think I might have actually preferred to have a lineup more similar to what Ad Chiu played, which was based on many similar ideas, but he went more all in into the strategy of like always banning the Sapphire control deck and like targeting the, let's say, the aggro mid range character based strategies even more heavily than I did. And I think ultimately that may have been better. Well, also given the results, he managed to come second in the constructed rounds. Um, yeah, like when I played my lineup against DKP and Kurt in testing on the Thursday, I was beating them. That gave me some confidence. But then during the tournament itself, I only went 1-3 in the constructed rounds. I think there is like yeah, various possible reasons for that. Um, One is, well, I lost all four die rolls, and that didn't really help. Um, the other is that I also think my opponents were very well prepared and just played extremely well. Um, and I think it showed the level of skill that the top players actually had. Many of them, I would say, just played better than I did and were just well deserved victories. But yeah, as for the lineup, yeah, maybe we should go over the decks one by one. But yeah, staying somewhat flexible, I think, can have some value. But ultimately, I might have preferred to have stuck with something like Ed did, the more focused approach, or even what DKP did, like similarly, just ban steel and then present some aggro decks.
Sure, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely go into the deck lists individually. But before we jump in, we've two questions within our spilled ink section, which I found them to be quite interesting, and they might maybe relate to some of the topics we'll be discussing later. But I think it's definitely useful for us to dive into them. So the first one here is from Samuel. They say, Lorcana is my first TCG, so all of this discussion around DLC Season 2 is very interesting to me, especially regarding the longevity of the game. What is the balance between the competitive and casual play, and do people still buy product regardless of the competitive scene? I definitely want to play more at locals events or at an LGS, but I just don't have the time between family and work, so competitive Lorcana is probably out of the picture for me. You guys have mentioned this before. Competitive Lorcana is similar to sports entertainment for me. From that perspective, I hope that the DLC Season 2 remains just as interesting. I know this is maybe a too long don't read, but if you made it this far, thanks for the great content and looking forward to more as always. So I just wanted to point this comment out because it was interesting where they were mentioning like, oh, like I wanna play more Lorcana, I want to go to like more locals and more LGSs, and because I don't have the time for that, maybe competitive Lorcana isn't for me. However, there's plenty of examples of people that don't go to locals and can also still play competitive Lorcana, and it is still kind of a time commitment and how much you're practicing in your own time. There are definitely ways to play the game that aren't just going to your locals. However, of course, we do encourage going to your local game store to support the game week to week if you have the time. But I know myself and Moyen as competitive players, like we can't always go to locals every week. You know what I mean? People have busy lives, so we find different ways to practice with each other, be that over webcam or just kind of strategizing, talking theory, stuff like that. So I definitely think there's an opportunity for you to at least try it out. But I do love the comparison that I know Brendan made it before, how the competitive scene of card games is kind of like sports. High level sports. If you get to see like the best players perform and stuff, and Worlds was a great example of that, where I'm sure many people watching Worlds maybe haven't even ventured into competitive Lorcana. Maybe they've done one or two set champs, or maybe they haven't done anything, and they get to really see, the highest level of players battle out against each other. Um, but yeah, in relation to the question of what is the balance between competitive and casual play, and do people still buy product regardless of the competitive scene, that varies from TCG to TCG. But I would say uh, the the difficult thing, as we're competitive players, we're so invested in the game. I think the important thing to keep in mind is sometimes we actually need to take a step back and understand the different audiences that actually engage with Lorcana and play Lorcana. And the competitive community is extremely important to the game, and I also think it's important to the game's longevity, but it doesn't make up as large of a portion as you may first think, right? It's definitely a smaller percentage of players that are hyper competitive, super competitive, but I still think it's extremely important. And Frank, I'm sure you can speak about this from other TCGs.
Yeah, I completely agree with with everything you said. Um, if my experience within Magic the Gathering is any indication for Lorcana, then the vast majority of the Lorcana players, or the people who buy Lorcana product, are more casual. They will just play at the kitchen table, maybe just collect the cards that they like, and are not all that interested in the competitive side. We definitely have to understand that yeah, basically us three, but also probably the average listener to this podcast, is already in sort of an extreme bubble, in that we're just interested in the competitive aspects of the game, and probably many of the people that we talk to or interact with in the Lorcana space have a similar predisposition. But I do reckon that the vast majority of Lorcana fans are more casually oriented, and yeah, they will certainly enjoy a tournament here and there, but the total number of DLCs probably does not really affect them all that much.
Yep, I think I would agree with that as well. Uh, the second comment is from Hunter. They say, for me as a relatively new player, the DLC announcements were a big letdown. I'm competitively minded, and a chance to make it to Worlds is a big motivation for me to grind. I'm located in Finland, and I don't have the means to travel much, even within Europe, and set champs just isn't enough for me. So right now, it doesn't look great for opportunities to compete. A mid-tier regional event that would qualify you for DLC Day 2, for example, would be great, since it would lower the barrier to be in Worlds funnel a lot, even if the chance to make Worlds would be super small. So we've talked about this over, multiple different episodes and stuff like that. And I know there's going to be another Lorecast coming tomorrow, this Thursday, where Cooper, the senior tournament guy from Ravensburger, will be coming on, and I'm personally trying to stay very hopeful that he's going to be telling us his plans for the support for the third party events. And I, for one, will be very happy if we hear some things like, I don't know, there's a 256 player third party event, and top two of this event maybe qualify to Continentals or make it to a day 2 of a DLC, get a buy, something like that. I just think having more avenues for people to progress further and have different ways to maybe qualify to continentals and worlds is extremely important, and that will really help the lack of DLCs in certain regions. For example, like we talked about in America, a lot of it's clustered in kind of the northeast of the country, and maybe some folks in the west coast won't be able to travel there. If there are some third party events on the west coast that have these different avenues, it's just a lot more incentive for people um to go and attend them. And of course we'd love exclusive pricing, exclusive promo cards. That's the dream, but that I feel like that could be a little bit too late maybe. Like maybe all their plans are already kind of in process. They can't just make more of these promo cards out of thin air at the moment. But what they can do, I'm sure, is they could always just extend more invites and have more ways for people to potentially qualify to these more high level events. I'm sure you share my thoughts, Moyen. Would it entice you to go to more of these smaller third party events if there were more ways, like even first place, even just one spot, right? Would that entice you to play in it?
Yeah, but very very much so. I think I think we've talked in the past about like how personally for me the match to qualify for like European Continentals meant the world to me, and then the match for the Mickey, in comparison, I didn't care about, right? Like I would have loved to get the Mickey, but at the end of the day, I think for most competitors, really like getting to that next stage is such a huge thing that like I think even very very little spots, like one or two spots at like some third party, a few hundred player event, would be a big reason for a lot of players to attend more of these events.
For sure. Frank, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your opinion on some of these systems, if that's okay, where you've so much experience from Magic and you've seen so many different ways that they've probably done this over the years. Maybe one of your preferred methods of, you know, kind of these smaller mid-tier size events, because I know some systems are like points-based systems which reward you for playing kind of as many events as possible and kind of do consistency. Once you hit this threshold, then maybe you'll get an invite or something. Or maybe for Lorcana, it should just be that exclusive like first and second, or maybe just first kind of makes it. Would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I basically I completely agree with you and Moyen on all this. I can completely understand the position that this person who asked the question is in, where you are competitively minded and are just motivated to make it to the next big event. I think there are a lot of players like that, and also what I told some of the Ravensburger people at the World Championship is that I believe it is very important that you have these that you can cater to these aspirations, that you can put down events with sufficient prestige, and specifically offering an invite to a continental championship is a big factor in that. If I can speak to myself, like I saw these big like 500 player events come up in Europe in I don't know couple of weeks, which can be a lot of fun to play. But then yeah, if I look at the pricing, um, yeah, I'm honestly not all that excited about winning a whole bunch of booster boxes. But if you just put down like an invite to a continental championship as a first place, suddenly I would feel very excited to attend such an event. I think we like within Magic the Gathering. I also saw that like this year we got back a tournament series that's now called the Spotlight Series, very similar to the old Grand Prix tournaments, which can be huge events like over 1,000 players, open to everyone, with nice cash prizes. But then the main thing is that the top 8 players get a direct invite to the Pro Tour, and for many of the competitors, that was like a big motivation to actually come to these events because yeah, they aspire to make this next big step, and that is something that the competitive players really like to see. So even if there are not as many DLCs, which is disappointing, I would have liked to have seen more, but it is what it is. Just have to make the best with the opportunities we have, and it is nice to see that they expand all over the world because it's also good for the game to grow across different regions. But if these um, yes, like 500 player events set up by individual organizers can be supported with indeed like some continental championship invites, then I think that would go a very long way in catering to the hopes and dreams of all the competitive players and keep them excited to also keep playing and staying involved with the game.
100%. It pushes players to actually want to engage with these events. Exactly what you said, Frank. It's like a booster box of every
You
set.
need the stepping stones.
Yeah, a booster box of every set isn't going to excite every competitive player. Like you're going to get a certain portion of people that's like, oh, that's exciting, or you're going to hit the market where, and I'm sure there are plenty of competitive Lorcana players who are like this at the moment, who are like, I'm just itching to play any event, so I will go and play any event. I want to try and be competitive, but that's not going to push everybody, right? And I mean, I think it's easy. It is easy for us to sit here and say, "Oh, it doesn't cost them anything to just put out an invite or something like that." Of course, there's like technicalities, and you really have to work well with these third-party organizers. But I do think it seems like a pretty efficient way forward if they can make stuff like this happen. There has been some cool things I've seen, like more interesting pricing. For example, this event that I'll be casting in Sweden at the end of August, they just announced that there's going to be a uncut sheet from the first chapter with like a mystery rarity, which is cool. It's more of a collector item, but like for me, honestly, it's like the cherry on top. You can, and some of the events are also offering like first place gets hotel and flights paid for any DLC of their choice, and that is like a really great event. Uh, I'd also love. I hope it's the case that if somebody wins that they're also guaranteed a ticket no matter what. Like that would be funny if they get the hotel and flights, but they actually didn't get a ticket for the event. Um, but oh yeah, the cherry on top for me would be like if you just put like another invite there, or uh, some way of kind of getting a buy. I'd actually love to pick your brain on this as well, Frank. If they did do some system of being able to give somebody a buy for a DLC, would you like to see like maybe a couple of wins on day one, completely bypass day one. Now that we have this kind of best of 3, 12 rounds of Swiss with 8 being played on day one and 4 being played on day two, uh, do you think there could be an efficient system where maybe even offering a buy, while it's not a Continentals invite, it is still something that helps out a little bit more? Has that been done in Magic's past, where if you've won an event, you get maybe a little bit of a bonus in the next event you play, type of thing?
Yeah, those would be the equivalent of Grand Prix trials that effectively give out buys to DLC equivalent events. That was nice in the sense of like offering sort of indeed like a stepping stone, because you can also have like a whole bunch of events like these at a relatively local level, giving players something in between the set championships and the bigger DLCs, which is currently like a fairly big step, a fairly big difference, and more events in between that might give out buys could be a way to fill that out. An issue that you also mentioned with this prize of getting the trip to an upcoming event paid is that maybe these DLC tickets will just sell out immediately. So then the bigger challenge is actually getting a ticket in the first place over, I don't know, scoring some buys. Um, as long as demand for these events is going to outstrip supply, which I expect will be the case. Um, Making it more complicated with buys is not the ideal spot yet, but perhaps for the future it can definitely be a good approach.
For sure. Cool. And yeah, with that was this building section. If you guys want to have your questions read out on next week's episode of the podcast, be sure to pop a comment down below. For now, we're going to be jumping into Frank's deck lists, and also we're going to do a quick CTA for some upcoming tournaments. So yeah, the upcoming tournaments, we've been talking about them the past few weeks, but wanted to give it a shout out again. The first one is the Disney Lorcana Open #2. That's going to be taking place at Malmo Games Week on August 30th and 31st. The main caster and host is your boy Spessy. Love to see Spessy back in the booth. And he's going to be accompanied by myself and Kim. Kim is getting some practice in the booth in the lead up to her first official casting gig at Cardiff. If you guys are interested in getting tickets for this event, be sure to use code PODCANA at checkout to get yourself 5% off the ticket price. The next event is the Inc. Incorporated opening, taking place in Westminster in Baltimore in the States. I'm going to be flying over to cast this one alongside Baker. Kim is actually also going to be joining me for this one, and this one's particularly exciting because it's going to be, the very first week of major set 9 tournaments. So it's pretty much, I think, really going to define the meta. A lot of people will be looking at these first big weekend events to maybe get inspired to see what they're going to be picking up with a completely fresh new meta after rotation. So yeah, there's going to be a 10K taking place on September 6th, and if you don't make day 2, there will also be an Infinity format tournament taking place on the Sunday. If you're interested in the caster lineup, here it is. It's myself, Baker, Garrick, JDZ Quest, J-Bomb, Color, and it hasn't been officially announced, but I've been told I could talk about it. Kim will also be joining us in the booth for this one, which I'm super hyped about. So she gets, more experience and more people get exposed to her, which I'm really looking forward to. And then Moyen, I'll let you talk about this one.
Yeah, so in basically 2.5 weeks already, I'll be playing an event in Madrid, Spain, which is the what's it called? It's the Grand
the Grand Tournament.
Yeah, it's the Grand Lorcana Tournament, and there's already over 256 signups, and they have space for like 512 players. So signups are still going up every day, and I can't wait because basically I haven't played a big event since like I guess Ravensburg was a decently big event, and then before that EU Continentals, but there really like hasn't been that much to play for me, so I'm just getting excited to get out there and play some events again. Also, I've never been to Spain, so just getting to travel again, getting to meet the community. Very much looking forward to that.
Awesome. Yeah, and then with that, we are straight into Frank's deck lists. So, the first one we have here on the screen is your Ruby Sapphire, which is looks like the signature, DKP Shark burn list, and would love to hear your thoughts on why you decided to settle on this version of Ruby Sapphire as taking a look at the World Championship deck lists. There were very much two versions that were brought, right? There was the item build, and then there was the DKP Shark build. So, how much experience have you had with this deck prior to kind of practicing for the World Championship? Because I feel like this deck was kind of actually it wasn't. Wait, would it have been around for EU Continentals? No, because didn't DKP win in February, right? That's when he qualified to World. So maybe this deck had been floating around a little bit, but yeah, we'll just love to hear your overall thoughts on maybe the decision of why you brought this one over the item build.
Yeah, at the European Continental Championship, like over half a year ago, this specific build didn't really exist yet, but in testing, I also played with a bunch of decks, including sort of a precursor of this red-blue deck. And then, while preparing for the World Championship, I just played with a whole bunch of decks, so I felt comfortable enough playing anything. I also considered an item build, but I didn't really like how many uninkable bricks were in the item deck, and my testing also showed that trying to curve, let's say, Goofy into Maui Hero to All, then the Half Shark, and then gaining some lore back with a Pirate's Life was just one of the best ways to beat the most aggressive decks. I was able to beat like Ember Steel like fairly consistently with it. In the end, at the World Championship, I think I was the only player to run the full 4 copies of Goofy Super Goof, which also fell in line with my ban strategy, just aiming to answer Mr. Smee or Piglet, and not bothering with stuff like Hideaway for mirror matches. In fact, for a while, I even had some Bell Apprentice Inventor in my list, just to play her on turn 1 with a Popsicle to help against the aggro decks. But ultimately, while tuning it in the last days, I brought back the MacDuck Manor Scrooge's Mansion, because I still wanted to retain some flexibility and have a chance against opposing Ruby Sapphire decks in case I had to ban something different. So ultimately, the deck ends up fairly close to what I would play in a regular core constructed tournament. Perhaps I had more Goofies than normal, but overall, just a reasonably well-rounded build against other aggro or mid-range character-based decks.
Looks super solid, yeah.
Because I've been talking to Speci a lot also in the lead up and also like while casting worlds, and sometimes the idea that was floating around a lot is like, oh, to beat aggro you have to play Bell. But I always was like a little bit hesitant to agree, because in my mind, what beats aggressive decks more consistently is just playing Rush Goofy on 3, Rush Maui on 4. And that aggro can totally overcome like a turn 1 Bell, but that actually provides even better chances to maybe stabilize very early.
Yeah. I think this deck is like, as you mentioned there, Frank, it seems pretty well optimized for, like, I feel like if you brought this to like your set champs or anything, it's like a very well-rounded version of the DKP burn list. Like, yeah, like you said, maybe you could go down on a Goofy and go up on some other stuff, but super solid deck, and a fierce deck to play against if you're not too familiar with how it all operates. So moving on to your next one, we have what I would describe as like your signature color combination, the deck that I would imagine you're the most comfortable playing, the deck where you've probably tested out the most of playing different card counts of this card or that card. And yeah, talk to us about your preparation for playing this Amber Steel deck. I can imagine you actually probably had a lot of fun maybe testing this deck.
I did, I did. I didn't get to play it at Worlds too often because it got banned quite frequently.
Sure.
But yes, Ember Steel is a color combination dear to my heart. The way I ended up building it, some similar ideas as what Edmund Chu had. Just trying to go bigger so that you can go over the top in Ember Steel mirrors, just with high willpower characters like the Ariel Sonic Warrior. Um, I then opted for the 5-drop Robin Hood over the Beast Tragic Hero because the sixth willpower seemed more important against and then along came Zeus, but basically either 5-drop fills a similar role. The way to beat the pseudo mirror or to get ahead against other aggro character based decks is just to have some of these high heavy drops to take over the board. I didn't include a whole new world because I didn't want to refill the hand of like a hyper aggro deck, which I would also face more frequently with my ban strategy. And I wasn't gonna play too much against slower control decks where a whole new world can be strong. So instead, I used Dock as my card draw engine. And in the meantime, I still want to retain some flexibility, some aggressive capability in case opponents would not ban this deck. Then I could, depending on how the lineups shook out, could put it on the play and still win with like a Curve of Daisy into Piglet or Mr. Smee, Lawrence, just quest for a lot. But now on the whole, I just wanted to go a bit bigger. This does lead to a lot of weird, seemingly weird numbers in the shift lines. I think I had it all from like I had 4 small Cinderella, 1 big Cinderella. I had 3 small Rhino and 4 big Rhino. I had 2 small Robin Hood and 2 big Robin Hood, or the classic 3 small Ariel and 2 big Ariel. So it was a bit all over the place, but I don't know, all the numbers made sense as I was trying to fill um, certain spots in the curve in particular. And yeah, I also wanted, because it was open deck list, to have like at least like a single big Cinderella in there to make every small Cinderella more threatening to the opponent. Um, but yeah, it was mainly like filling up the curve in a way that made sense to me. Even had like a split between like 1 Troubadour and 2 Ursula Vanessa, because the 2 cards are typically just as good, but then I could, if I would draw both, then I could, let's say, ink an Ursula Vanessa to play the Troubadour and thereby bluff not having Rapunzel in hand because the fourth willpower is mainly valuable with a Rapunzel trap.
Sure.
Then put the idea that I don't have Rapunzel into the opponent's mind and still get them with a Rapunzel that I did have. Um, Ultimately, it doesn't really matter what split you have there. It's largely irrelevant. But yeah, I had some fun with my one-offs, just giving some options like these.
So
I
did
just wish I had more of a chance to have played the deck at Worlds.
that's literally what I was gonna ask. Was like, so how many times did you actually get to play this, or was it banned every single time?
Yeah, just once.
Only once, damn. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the strategy that I remember watching Moynihan's Bessie stream that like there was this pattern of we saw so many competitors just going for this like banning the steel decks or the like you were talking about Frank like banning the sapphire decks, that type of thing, um having a
Yeah,
very
it it,
consistent strategy.
it actually surprised me that so many players were banning steel because, well, if you build your decks with it in mind, like if you have like a hyper aggro deck, or if you have like all of these Oswalds in your item deck, then it can make sense. You'd rather live in a world where Let the Storm Rage On doesn't exist. But for many other lineups, if you ban Steel, then you will often face like both a red blue control deck and then likely a green purple. I don't know.
Tempo deck,
Deck
right? Yeah. Mm.
maybe with some discard or aggro elements, and the cards you need against one deck are quite different from the cards you need against the other deck. So that leads to a lot of tension in the card choices, and I do feel like many of the players who banned Steel but didn't have their hyper aggro deck or like a complete lineup tuned for that could sometimes put themselves into a tough position.
Hmm. Your next deck is a green purple deck. Your Amethyst Emerald deck. So we saw many different versions of this run over the course of World Championships. Some discard versions, some not so discard orientated. This one does indeed have the Prince John there. And is it? Oh, you actually do have this one drop, this other purple one drop Diablo that Spessy is so fond of. So I'm sure Spessy was very happy to see this in there because that was kind of the whole package that he was like, oh, if you play the Diablo stuff, like let's play this Diablo as well. I've noticed so many similarities with this deck to the deck that I like to play, which is the Amber Emerald one. There's so many similar opening lines where uh, the benefit of this is you're pretty much always guaranteed a one drop. You've way more one drops than what my deck would have, but the power of playing a two drop onto playing Prince John on three and then being able to sing a discard song. Granted, that doesn't. It's not always the line that you take in this because you don't have a max amount of Prince Johns, but that's probably what you want, the type of thing you want to be doing against maybe a slower um, control deck. So I like all of the different avenues and the different routes that this deck can take. But yeah, sorry, Frank, I know you're about to speak about it, so go ahead.
Yeah, the Diablo Fateful Pet, the 2-1 for one allowed me to, well, just put all the different Diablos in there. I had like 5 different Diablos in the deck. The reason why I opted for that one over the green one drop
Mm-hmm.
Diablo is largely because I was trying to gear my deck more against like the aggro mid range decks like Ember Steel, and I feel that Diablo Fateful Pet was just capable of efficiently challenging Mr. Smee or Piglet, which is what I wanted out of my one drop. Also, given that it was open deck list, the hand reveal value of Diablo Maleficent Spy was not as important. Ultimately, the way I built the deck was largely geared towards beating these aggro mid range decks with additional copies of the 5-drop Bell or the 5-drop Kriki, including your Peter Pans and Iagos. I I still retained some elements that I figured could help against Ruby Sapphire because I wasn't all in on banning that. So I kept a couple Prince Johns and Sudden Chill, but I didn't max out on discard elements. Like I didn't include stuff like Chip or Hypnotize or Lucifer. I also went down on the numbers of the levers, pull the lever, wrong lever. I retained a couple to have a couple additional answers against Maui Half Shark in the deck, but I didn't want to max out on them. I'd rather just have some big characters to challenge, and yeah, that's roughly how I built the deck for a while. My list even included the Muses and Under the Sea instead of like Prince John and discard.
Wow, I would
But
love to see that. That version spikes my interest. That sounds very interesting.
yeah, it was spicy and it definitely helped against the hyper aggro decks. But yeah, it was ultimately a bit of a balance in trying to be reasonable against a whole different bunch of lineups.
Sure. Moyne, are you
Well,
gonna ask about the I don't want to steal your question, or maybe you're not going to ask the question about the what's the card?
Uh,
The improvise.
Um, no, in general, I I think there's so from last week's events there was a few spicier lists that also did pretty well,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a few of them make sense to talk about here. But like you don't have to don't go into too much detail about them. But there was also like a green purple list by Gabriel Dino that made like top 8, I think, in one of the events that was playing the Muses in green purple, but they were also to support the Muses to play extra songs. They were playing um some, I think, 2 copies of Heffalumps and Woozles.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might have been an avenue for your strategy as well. Maybe even more so if you like have a strict ban Ruby Sapphire strategy, but even when you're like leaning towards benching it, um, because it kind of like the Muses against anything that's not Ruby Sapphire provides provides a lot of tempo and removal, and then in combination with the Heffalumps and Woozles, maybe you also get like a little bit of an edge in the Iago mirror. Um, so I just found that interesting that like something you tested now also did pretty well just in an attempt to tech against um the more aggressive decks.
Yeah.
Um, the other one was, oh, so that I added it in the last slide. There was an Ember Steelers that got second place at the Pro Play Summit,
Mm-hmm.
and that list is so interesting to me. This would not have fit your strategy, I think, but to me, what this list is kind of trying to do is, it's playing the aerial Stormage on Zeus, everything, and just by including that package, you're kind of favored against Ember Steel decks that don't play aerial and Zeus, right? Um, Usually, this comes at the expense of weakening your Ruby Sapphire matchup by a lot. But what this deck also decided to do is play the Daisy Duck 4-drop that discards 1, but also You Have Forgot Me that discards 2. So in like an open field, I'm very curious, like, how well can you, how much does this help against Ruby Sapphire while also still being good in the mirror? So like lists like these I've been tinkering around with a lot recently, where because if you play the discard stuff, maybe you can also play like Sad Beast because it gets to stick a little bit better, and then you could combine a lot of these different ideas where maybe you play like Daisy, so Daisy on 4, Sad Beast on 5 into like the aerial. But also, so this was when I was getting lost in the spice maybe a little bit, but I thought now that if you are including the Daisy, um, to kind of one help against Ruby Sapphire, but two also help outgrind other fast decks because they just run out of cards pretty quickly if they also have to discard a little bit. I was thinking you could you now you're including a lot of 4-drops, so I think the I don't know, is it called Dewey, the uninkable 2/3 that on quest discounts 1,
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of starts to make a lot of sense because then you can just curve this 4-5-6 just a turn early, and the 2/3 isn't actually that easy to contest early, and it has synergy with Doc. The only
Yeah.
problem is it doesn't line up very well with like with the shift Rhino line, but you could just opt to play less of the 1-drop Rhino, and then on the instance where you open small Rhino, big Rhino, and Dewey, you could still say, okay, this game I won't shift, I will just play Dewey on 2, and then the big Rhino on 3. Okay. To tie this back in, the discard package in Amber Steel, what do you think about it? Do you think it like gives you a reasonable chance at like improving Ruby Sapphire matchup, or do you think this still folds to it?
So I think it can help in that matchup a little bit, but my first impression is that the cards are still somewhat underwhelming, especially when you cannot leverage them with, let's say, a Prince John,
Mhm.
because you would then try to discard the opponent's hand with, a stray Daisy Duck or stray You Have Forgotten Me. But if you cannot combine that with enough pressure, say
Mhm.
via piglets or the like, then the opponent will typically have enough time to sort of draw out of it,
Yeah.
because their cards are generally going to be just more powerful than yours in the late game, and you cannot discard the top of their deck. Um, and yeah, that's why I'm a little hesitant about this strategy.
Yep.
I mean, even if it helps a little bit against Ruby Sapphire, I fear that it may weaken your edge against the rest of the field by too much when you just draw kind of a medium weak Daisy Duck or You Have Forgotten Me, whereas a card that would have affected the board more immediately may
Yeah.
have been able to get you over the edge.
Yeah, it was some like part of my experience as well. There was still times where like even in the mirror against faster decks, if you just like if they go to down to one or two cards in hand, and at the right time you have the Stacey or you have forgotten me, it could be good in any matchup. But then once you get to the stage where everyone's just out of out of cards after the end, like after their turn anyways, and then you draw into the you have forgotten me and daisies, that can be really, really painful. Okay. The I think one more thing that's really important about how you build decks, especially after we've had add-on for last week. It's like the big contrast is um Ed's probably the one that plays the least amount of different cards in their decks, and you're probably the pro player within the community that plays the most amount of different cards in their deck. Um and I'm probably somewhere in between, but rather leaning in your direction, where I do really value um, the amount of options that this can provide you. But yeah, basically, how do you justify playing this amount of different cards, um, considering maybe the lost? Because I guess okay, so the, the the argument that some people would bring against this is okay, you're losing consistency, but I think that's not really a good argument because you're never really losing consistency on the cards that you really want, and you're actually gaining consistency in like how your deck curves out and gaining value in the options. But I think a more reasonable argument against how you build your decks could be that it loses some, like it gets a lot less streamlined, right? It you don't get to play towards the same goal and game plan all the time, or you don't get to play towards that just based on the range of cards that you could be drawing into being a lot wider, and you like being able to rely less on kind of being able to know how to predict what you're going to draw into. So based on that argument, how would you maybe like still justify the way you build your decks?
Um, yeah, all great points. I would say that well, for one, a deck like ads with like all four ofs is far easier to pick up and understand and play, because you know all cards have like a clear goal. The overarching strategy of the deck is a bit more immediately apparent. Whereas, yeah, picking up a deck with so many one, two, and three ofs is a bit more difficult to grok. When I build it myself, I understand why every card is in there and like why the numbers are what they are. But if you didn't build the deck yourself, then it can be a bit more difficult to understand and play and figure out how to run it. Um, that said, there are like a number of reasons for running less than four copies of a card. One can be that you would like to draw one copy of a certain card, but ideally not multiples. Then running three or two or three is often a better number if the second copy of a card is often a little awkward or situational or weak. Another is that I'm often trying to fill out like a specific curve, which need not be a multiple of four, right? If I want to have 10 one drops, 10 two drops, I don't know, 7 three drops, I'm just giving some random numbers. But let's say that that kind of distribution would maximize the probability of curving out while retaining enough like late game power, then yeah, you cannot escape running certain cards as 2 or 3 copies because you want to fill out these spots in the curve. Um, and yeah, ultimately, when 2 cards are roughly as good as each other, then having a split between them will give you additional options when you draw one of each in the games, and then you can just pick whichever is better for the game situation at hand. But indeed, all um, the problems with having a little bit less consistency in your overarching game plan is potentially a downside. And yeah, I guess what works for Ed works for him, and I think will work for many players. I don't know, enjoy my one-offs. Besides all the factors that I mentioned, it's also more fun to me to see different cards in the games.
Hmm.
Perhaps that's also why I enjoy limited so much. You just get thrown into different game situations more frequently, and you don't fall into the same patterns all the time. And by keeping the game fresh, I enjoy it more. Um, so I um, I think there was like sort of a Haufen challenge recently. Perhaps the ideal framework I would put down for that if you want to combine both consistency with your best cards, but also having flexible options, is to run 12 different cards as 4-offs, right? So then you have 48 cards, and then 12 one-offs
Mm-hmm.
for added variety and flexibility. This need not be the perfect distribution, but it's a fun and at least mathematically elegant framework if you want to build your deck uh, with both of these ideas. And what I'm planning to do at my next set championship is to like I think I shared the list with you, is to just, and then this is not going to give me the best chance to win, but it will make sure that I will have the most fun during the tournament, is to just literally play 60 one-offs, an all singleton deck. I feel like now that we have like all 8 sets, it might actually be viable, probably not anymore after rotation when the card pool shrinks. And yeah, I built like a 60 card Ember Steel deck, which just is filled with all kinds of cards that I have played over the years. So it's like a nice way to give a proper send off right before rotation. Um, the curve is solid. Most of the card choices are, reasonable and have been played in competitive decks before. And yeah, by running this, I will just have way more fun in my local set championship than anything I could accomplish with a more finely tuned deck with a lot of 4-offs. But yeah, remember that this is just a challenge for fun, seeing how far I get with 61 offs. If you want to win your local set champs, probably don't copy this. But I like how within the rules of Lorcana you can put down some self-imposed challenges and just have fun with it, just like sort of a team deck that you can build.
I miss playing decks like this. I used to be a big fan of playing like the Highlander decks in Hearthstone, which would have like Reno Jackson and stuff, where a card that would actually like it would specifically reward you for
Yep.
having one ofs within your deck,
Yep.
and oftentimes, like you said, Frank, you just kind of saw more variety of cards. I felt like, well, I mean, in comparison as well, Hearthstone's a very different game where there's a lot of like random generation and stuff that can happen that you can't really get within a physical card game. Discovering spells and cards and stuff like that. But yeah, this honestly seems like a very fun way to approach set champs. I know I have to give a shout out to LD Steve. He was like advocating for like the Haufen challenge last set. He got lots of people onto it as well. So I would love to see a collaboration between you and him and maybe Artabax. If you take this down, you'd have to go into the Artacast and speak about your experience with the deck. Would be very, very cool.
I'll shoot them a message. And yeah, if there were a card in Lorcana like the one you mentioned that actually rewards you for playing an all singleton deck, I mean, I really hope to see something like that in an upcoming set.
Yeah. For me, I love the challenge of having like this constricted deck building. And I think singleton deck building is like extremely skill expressive if the card pool is big enough. Um, Still, I'm always skeptical about cards that reward you for playing singleton, because in Hearthstone, these cards often turned out to be so powerful that while the deck building process was very very skill intensive and fun, like the gameplay at some points was just like, do you draw the card that rewards you for playing the singleton deck?
Yeah.
Because that's such a big swing. So for me, what you're doing right now is like perfect because there's no card in your deck where it's like super swingy if you draw it or not draw it. It's just like a bigger challenge on yourself, and I sure think it will be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's quickly jump into some of the top performing deck lists from this week. So taking a look at the first place deck list from the PPG 15K. This was a 451 player event. The event was taken down by non-inkables Botsu, and yeah, I mean when I looked at like the first row of this deck list, I was like, oh my god, it's the exact cards that Frank played. It's like no wonder it's the DKP Shark list. But of course, different kind of card counts in here. As you mentioned, Frank, you weren't playing hideaways because of your specific ban strategy, but we can see the one of hideaway in this list, the one of Maleficent Dragon, one of Merlin's Carpet Bag, which was similar to the bring that DKP had. Most of these decks, like they're they're very similar, but like the different one ofs are quite interesting. So in my opinion, seeing the Maleficent Dragon here, it seemed like Botsu was expecting a lot of other Ruby Sapphire decks, be that shark decks or item decks, because the Maleficent Dragon is pretty efficient at being able to take down maybe half shark, also an 8 cost Tamatoa, so wanted to kind of include that in there. Also the 4 of B preps as well, so there's different ways people build like kind of the board clears in these red blue shark decks, where maybe sometimes they're a little bit higher on the Sisu than the B preps, or oftentimes it's like a 3-3 split between the Sisu and the B preps. Moyen, what are your overall thoughts on this deck, since I know you've played it a lot as well yourself?
Yeah, well, it's it didn't change much. I think the biggest change to what it used to be is kind of like this one carpet bag that's seeing more and more play. It's not just the mirror, it's kind of like every grindy matchup, it helps you to stay proactive, where that's sometimes where the deck can struggle if the first few sharks and manas are dealt with. Sometimes it struggles to actually proactively put up a threat or keep doing stuff, right? Sometimes it runs out of stuff. And this is one way to combat that. It's not like the most efficient way to do it, because it's not the greatest card, but it's it might still just be the most like after. Okay, so first all of the Tamatoas were added so you could stay proactive after all of these Talas or Fargos that help you do that. But then after that, it might be the next most efficient way to ensure you have stuff to do. And yeah, it's still very. It's not as strong as maybe it was said before, because the aggro Amber Steel deck used to be a very very good matchup, where now it's like very close. But it's still very well positioned in the meta.
Yep, I'll definitely still be bringing my lemon lime deck against these shark builds. Still feel like it's a pretty good matchup for me. The next deck was by Jordan Serio. They placed first at the 10K from the PPG event. It was 357 players. I want to say I know Jordan very well. I don't, but he's a fellow Amber Emerald enjoyer, so you could probably see that's why you can see he's a fan of the discard package in this deck, right? Opting for nearly the max amount of Johns. Quite a lot of chip. I don't usually see 3 chips. I kind of see 1 or 2 ofs played in a lot of decks. So really going quite all in on the discard package within the screen purple deck, and overall I think I like the deck. I like the choice of the one ofs a lot, in particular, and also this card They Never Come Back, which for those of you who are unfamiliar with it is a 3-cost inkable action which reads up to 2 chosen characters can't ready at the start of their next turn, and you draw cards. So kind of like a Elsa Spirit of Winter effect, but just on an action card. So yeah, I like this. I like it. There's still so many people like constantly trying to innovate on these lists. For me personally, it does feel like we've seen these cooler combinations and stuff for like quite some time, and I've already spoken about like I'm super pumped for rotation and kind of a bit of a fresh meta. But I'm glad to see there's a lot of people that still get a lot of enjoyment out of trying to tinker with these builds, similar to what you were talking about, Moyne, with like the Amber Steel deck and trying to experiment with kind of the discard package and that. It's nice to know that people enjoy that. And the last list. Oh, sorry, Frank. Go ahead.
Yeah, this list looks like a lot of fun. I like the one Hypnotic Strength and one They Never Came Back to also deal with opposing Iagos. It's also coherent when you have more Prince Johns and chips, especially when you're not trying to ban red blue. Having that discard package can help defeat them. When I do look at this list, I am a bit concerned about the early part of the curve. It has slightly fewer 1-drops and 2-drops than I had, and that then may come with a substantially increased risk of not being able to affect the board in the early turns. Of course, when you add in all these chips and additional actions, you have to make space somewhere, but yeah, it does come with a bit of a risk. And maybe if I look at this deck, perhaps I might have shaved down on some of the Peter Pans and Iagos to then spread out those characters more across the curve to make it a bit more likely to spend all of your ink resources on every turn of the game. But yeah, apart from that, it's somewhat similar to what I played at the World Championship, just with a more pronounced discard package, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I went through all of the Emerald Amethysts that topped last week. And there was like another deck that was only a single cut off that also topped. So seemed to have performed very well over the week. The only card that was different was like instead of They Never Come Back, I think they played an extra Hypnotize. So yeah, as you leave Ruby Sapphire up, suddenly a lot of the Emerald Amethysts were playing like 3 or maybe even 4 Prince John, and then a lot of extra discard triggers to also improve that matchup.
Makes sense to me, yeah. And then the final list we want to talk about is the first place deck from the Galactus Grand Prix event within Italy. This was 332 players and it was won by Leonardo Zaccardi. Here is a red-blue items list, but it has Chicha in it, which I think is a little bit unique. Chicha is a card that you experimented a lot with, Moyen, back in, I want to say you played it in like Blue Steel when you went to Seattle. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. Well, it's a very, very powerful card if you go Chicha on 2, Quid on 3. The upside of that Blue Steel deck was like it wanted to go Quill on 3 after a 2-drop anyways. Whereas now in these Ruby Sapphire lists, I've still been trying it a lot, but it's a lot harder to include because a lot of the time you also want to ramp on 2 and then play a 4-drop. And you don't always want to play Quill on 3. And if you play Quill on 3, you don't have another 2-drop on 2 that's not ramp. So like they don't synergize very well together anymore. And at first I thought, well, I to an extent I still think that this deck is kind of playing matchup roulette in that this will be great in the mirror. If you open Chicha Quill in the mirror, it's very hard to lose. This will be great against maybe Blurple and Ruby Amethyst, against these slower decks that if the only way for them to take out Chicha is if they spend more ink than what Chicha costed. Against all of those decks, you'll be flying with this deck. But I was thinking, okay, but surely, I think still the most represented ink combination at most of these tournaments is Amber Steel. Surely this hurts your Amber Steel matchup. But they actually tagged me on Twitter, and I saw their matchups, and like it in Swiss they beat Amber Steel 3 out of 3 times, and then in the first 3 rounds of Top Cut they all beat Amber Steel.
Wow.
Some of them being aggro, some of them being real, but most of them, or like 3 out of the 6 of them actually being aggro. So I'm that seems quite unlikely to me, but yeah, I'm very impressed with this list beating aggro and Bastille 3 times out of 3 times.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that as well. We actually tested a Chicha fishbone quill build. I tested that together with like DKP on the Wednesday before the World Championship when he was working on perfecting his lineup to ban steel. Because Chicha just felt miserable if the opponent can have Let the Storm Rage on. But like along with Fishbone Quill, potentially good if you don't have to worry about the steel removal. Ultimately, after playing with that for a bunch of games, we didn't like it enough because the cards were, even though they were strong together as a combo, they were individually a bit too weak, and we didn't like the high roll aspect of it. I'm surprised that this performed so well in a wider field, also against all these steel decks. But yeah, it is still nice to see all the different ways in which you can build red blue, because that adds some nice diversity to the metagame.
I'm glad we have different ways to build decks because if the decks, like we spoke about this before, right? If the red blue deck was literally one type of red blue, it I think it would have. I mean, Moin, you spoke about this, right? It would have made the World Championships probably even less interesting, or there would have very much been a correct lineup to bring then, I think, because then there's just less variety of different things to expect, right? So
yeah, especially for like the lineup that that Frank played, right? Which was the one we expected the most. If you play Emerald, Amethyst, Amber, Steel, Ruby, Sapphire, if all of those had like a single deck, then there wouldn't be a lot of room to tinker around with. But the fact that all of these decks could have, not even just 2 ways, all of these in combinations could have been built in like numerous different ways, really saved the tournament.
It also made it far more difficult to try to beat Ruby Sapphire with a targeted lineup. That's something that like I tried at the beginning. I mean, I tried like a whole bunch of things. The lineup that I ended up in was really Plan B, whereas Plan A was try to break it, but I couldn't really get there. And like one of the things that I tried in trying to break it is, expecting that most of the field would be on a Ruby Sapphire deck, which makes sense due to the triple deck constraints, and then like try to present 3 decks that all reliably beat Ruby Sapphire, even if they may do poorly against the rest of the field. Doesn't really matter if the opponent can just never win with a Ruby Sapphire deck, then they just cannot win the match. But it was still kind of difficult to beat them when they were on the play, and especially because there were just multiple different builds. Finding the right card choices to target Ruby Sapphire was tough because, cards like, let's say, World's Greatest Criminal Mind were great against Maui Half Shark, but then weak against items. Cards like, I don't know, let's say Find Them, Flatten Them were great against Maurice's Workshop, but fairly useless against the Shark builds. And it was just a bit too difficult to build a deck that could reliably beat and target Ruby Sapphire. If indeed there had been only one way to build it, things may have looked completely different at the World Championship.
did you? I'm curious, Frank, and I'm actually curious how many other players experimented with this as well. So the lineup that I kept saying, like again, this is without doing an insane amount of testing, but the idea there of trying to be able to beat red blue, from what I probably would have started to test out and tinker with, would have been like bringing my own version of red blue and then bringing uh amber emerald discard and then like a purple steel, variant of maybe the broom one or something that Zach Bivens brought. uh I'm curious as to how that might have gone, but then is there a fear of, if you're using that lineup to target red blue, I imagine, and if they're on like they should be playing a red blue deck as well. They're probably gonna either ban the discard deck or ban your red blue. But if I was to bring that lineup, my strategy would be like, yeah, build the lemon lime to be able to easily tackle the red blue matchup. It can be pretty decent into other board based matchups. The purple steel can kind of be this tempo deck that you can really turn the gas on, and then try and just build your red blue to beat the mirror. But then even building your red blue to beat the mirror, it's like it's hard because then you don't know what version of red blue they're playing. So then even building your red blue is so difficult because you need to have so many different kind of card choices. But is that a lineup that you potentially considered?
Yes, tested all that. Um, Two difficulties with it were, well, one, building your red blue deck to beat the mirror is difficult when opponents may be doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think many players at the World Championship showed up with these red blue decks with like 4 hideaways main deck and like already like geared for the mirror match. So yeah, then it just gets hard to get a very strong edge there. Um, Also, your favorite lemon lime discard deck. I did test it a bunch against red blue, and initially the discard deck was winning, but then after I figured how the red blue deck should play, basically just always maintain a good hand size, like not even bother with depot, but rather dig for the popsicles and tamatoas to make sure that you always have enough cards in your hand to toss to discard effects, and then ramp towards a big Sisu if you have
Yeah.
enough of those.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, it was actually like the red blue deck was actually winning in the matchup. So that's ultimately when that sort of lineup was discarded. I did expect more players to show up with basically that exact lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's also why I built my other two decks to be good on the play because I expected. Oh, sorry, to be good on the draw because I expected many players to try to target red blue. In which case, I would have to put that on the play to give myself the best chance of beating their anti-red blue decks, which meant that my other two decks had to be at least serviceable on the draw. Um, but yeah, not many players actually showed up with that particular lineup with the lemon lime discard deck. Perhaps they also found in testing that it still struggled to defeat red blue, and especially that the item builds
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
when they get like a bunch of workshops on the table. That's also not something you can discard. So it came with some difficult flaws to manage.
It's very different. It's exactly what we talked about. Like I feel like if the only version of red blue that was playable was the shark one, suddenly it's a different story because it's a lot more favor against that. But yeah, as soon as there's workshops on the board and stuff, it gets very difficult. I also think a deck like the Amber Emerald discard one is like it often does better in events where it's I'd say it's not a very commonly played deck, so a lot of the time you can just surprise your opponent with how discard heavy it is, or like you said, Frank, the opponent's just doing their normal thing with Tipo and ramping, and then you discard them like literally at the perfect time. So there's a lot of surprise factor that goes along with that deck, and maybe in an open deck list format, and you're playing against the best players in the world, right? So they should know how to play against this deck, and that drastically changes things.
Yeah. To me, it's not just. It's really not just open decklist. It's more so. Um, once if the red blue player knows the matchup and knows how to play it, it's at least quite even. I think. I'm not sure like red blue suddenly wins it, but like it it goes from if you play it like at a wider range at like maybe even a DLC. I think if you play Ember Emerald well, you will crush most Ruby Sapphire players. But then like at the
Mhm.
World Championship, you can't really
It's
expect
very
your
different.
opponent not to know how to play the matchup.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Cool. With that, we are gonna go talk about Frank's sealed lineup. All right. So Frank, you were the very first feature match that everybody got to see for the World Championship. Before you jump into kind of your seal pool, how are you feeling? I mean, you've been on camera loads of times, right? But were you excited to be able to say, yes, I'm like the first feature match? Were you confident being able to show off your deck after coming out of the kind of deck construction phase and obviously being sat down across from Zan, right? It was like a killer first round for everybody to watch.
Yes, well, definitely one of the stronger opponents in the field to start off with. Then again, yeah, the difference in skill and preparation between everyone was small. So like basically all my opponents at the World Championship played to just the best of their abilities. But yeah, did I feel excited or nervous? No, not specifically. It felt like just a normal match. I try not to focus too much on the cameras or the lights and just focus on playing the best I can. Um, I did my best in the games, though I still made a few mistakes here and there. But yeah, that'll happen to everyone. You just have to shrug them off and move on. And yeah, the games we played, I think, hopefully showed that Sealed is a lot of fun because to me it is the most enjoyable way of playing Lorcana because you just get thrusted into these different unusual board states all the time that you have to evaluate on the fly, and I enjoy that sort of gameplay. As for my deck, I thought it was quite solid. At the same time, all the decks I played against were also seemingly above average. So everyone clearly knew how to build their sealed decks. I was happy to have a couple of evasives. Those are the most important things in sealed, but also a strong enough late game. After playing more and more sealed, I felt that just having a large density of, let's say, five and six cost, sometimes even seven cost characters in the deck can give you an edge as you get to the late game, where sometimes you run out of cards, but then if your deck has a high density of those heavy hitters, your top decks are going to be better than your opponents. And yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I was hoping that limited or sealed would be part of the DLCs next season. Ultimately, that hasn't happened, but I'm still hopeful for 2027.
Yeah, you had some
It,
heavy hitters like the that 7 cost 7/7, that quest for 3, like that was a really important breakpoint. I feel like for you to try and ink to in case you top deck that. I just remember you like I don't know, top decking genies and stuff at some stages. We're like, oh, this is absolutely crazy. And then yeah, the moment Zan played that card against you, I believe in the second game. Don't even know what the name of it is. It's like something about the Hexwell Crown. It's the Amethyst Steel one that exerts all of your cards, and then if he challenges and I don't know if it's challenge and banish. Maybe it was just challenge, but he gets a lot of extra lore. Um, and I didn't quite get to catch your interview that you had after the game, but I believe you said something along the lines of like, because again, this is like it is technically open deck list, but there's so many things to remember, and there was
Mm.
like one thing that like I think if you didn't play one of the extra characters or something, it actually meant that he couldn't win the game. But like in this, I completely understand. Like in these moments, it's like, okay, how can you really account for all of those things? So obviously, after it happened, you're probably like, oh, of course he potentially had that. But how are you feeling in that moment when that happened, and then kind of evaluating it afterwards?
Yeah, the card you mentioned where you indeed gain a bunch of lore when you're challenging. That one I remembered from Zan's deck,
Hmm.
and the I remember the turn before thinking, well, if he has that, he still cannot actually win. So I can just like quest out, and then he will just have to try to answer everything, which
Hmm.
he cannot do, and I don't think he can get to 20. The card that I completely forgot about
Cobra, right?
was Giant Cobra,
Mm.
Ghostly Serpent, which gave him then 2 additional points of lore. Um, had I thought of that, because then he would have been able to, as he did, like get to the requisite 20 lore in a single turn. Had I remembered that, I would have played differently. But yeah, honestly, my memory is not my strongest suit in card games, and it showed here. Still, I think it also made for an exciting game to watch because Zan also clearly played to his outs and like made it work with the very difficult board state that he was in. So yeah, I think it just led to an awesome game that showcased what Sealed is capable of.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's also it is, even if you remember it, it's like even then it's not quite clear to that you're supposed to play around it, but because like then you have to think about, by playing around it, do you maybe open up to just Zen being able to clear the board instead? Um, so it was a very complicated spot, but I think your entire match was like the best sealed I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was insane.
But and so it was a great round one, but it was just it also made it so that it was impossible for the next round to like keep up with that,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
The
Yeah.
next rounds they were fine. Round two was okay. Round three was pretty fun, but like after that round one, they didn't compare at all. Um, and I think sealed has the chance to be all that, to be all about these weird board states, um, and playing around these very fringe cards that you usually don't see, or deciding not to play around them, or like all of these questing and challenging decisions. But I think Sealed also has the chance of having some non-games. Um, like
True.
I think from the three rounds that we've seen in total, they were like a very good showing for the format. Um, I'm still curious, like to maybe if like the 0-2 sealed player against another 0-2 sealed player would have, if we would have seen that match with maybe like some below average pulls, um, how good of a viewing that would have been, or like an experience to those players. It might have been that they could have built it very differently, but I guess in your round, the most fascinating thing to me was that Cusco. I think it was a Cusco,
Mhm.
the one
Yeah.
that says at the start of your turn you can make
Yeah.
both players draw a card or make both players discard a card. And at first, it seemed like, oh, that's like almost a symmetrical effect. You can kind of take advantage of it at times, maybe because you get to play the card first that you draw off it, or maybe you like use the discard effect when you're on 0 cards. But like mostly a symmetric effect with like below average stats. But then the when you played it, it was after Zan had made the decision that they didn't want to ink to 4. That it was
I
after they
remember
had
that. Yeah.
decided, okay, I'm trying to like win the value game, try to outvalue this in the long run. But immediately then, that's where the Cusco was so punishing, because suddenly, how do you outvalue this if we both draw 2 cards a turn? And then it was all of a tempo game, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then you also had like the 2-drop Mother Gothel and the 6-drop Mother Gothel, which is like, okay, now you are also out tempoing with like this infinite stream of cards, and like, how is this happening in Sealed? It was the most amazing match I've seen.
Yeah, I also had the 7-drop Cusco that had like a similar effect of just doing something on board and giving the opponent more cards in hand. But yeah, once Cusco like the 4-drop is deployed, suddenly the whole theme of the match shifts, where it's no longer about card advantage, but all about like maximizing ink to affect the board in the best way, which made the bounce effects in my deck so much stronger. And yeah, I think Zan and I also chatted for a bit after the match, where yeah, we discussed his decision to not ink, which I think was very dangerous against my deck in particular, which had a whole bunch of these tempo related cards. And that's also what I enjoy about the game of Lorcana, where even small decisions, turn 3 or 4, do you ink or not? What do you put into the inkwell? These can easily affect the outcome of the game, where yeah, these small decisions have a big effect. And yeah, I guess it also showed how, even though sealed very often is just a way of maximizing the individual strength of your cards and setting up good value trades, understanding the race and the combat math. Sometimes finding these small synergies or themes in your pool that you can craft a game plan around, that yeah, that makes it an awesome format to play. And yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the match.
Yeah, so the thing is, your deck kind of like it asked very difficult questions in that it if Zan does ink that turn and maybe leaves himself with like a low value hand, your deck was also super capable of just outvaluing that with like the density of your 5 cost and 6 cost and 7 cost characters, and then maybe it ends up being a game where you don't play the Cusco. So like it was kind of like a lose-lose situation where, at least depending on what tools you have access to, inking or not inking could both backfire.
Yeah. Yeah, and my list was actually kind of unusual too, in that I was including uninkable 7 drops in the main deck, which I don't always like to do because, well, you when you're on the play, you may not always reach 7 ink. It means that you typically cannot even play a 1 drop, which is fine on the play regardless. Usually those 1 drops on the play are just better used as ink, and using the 1 drops only to claw back when you're on the draw. But still, getting to 7 ink with uninkables can be a bit tough when you're constrained on resources on the play. But my deck actually had like a bunch of card draw, also headlined by Genie, which is such a powerhouse, evasive and card advantage. That's everything you want in sealed. And I also managed to find the Genie at the right time in the matches. But yeah, suddenly when you have enough card draw in the deck, you can actually get up to 7 reliably. And my curve had a bunch of these heavy hitting 7 drops to try to dominate in the late game, and that worked quite well. The only match I ended up losing with my seal deck was against Lucas Kaupa, who also played extremely well. We had very close, awesome games, and his deck was also off the charts with just the legendary evasives from Rapunzel to Maui Half Shark, um, that I ultimately couldn't raise. But yeah, it just had awesome matches of sealed against great opponents, and yeah, I'm happy to have had that experience at the World Championships.
Awesome, yeah. And yeah, as we kind of come towards the end of the episode, I know we briefly talked about kind of the DLC season 2 and our thoughts and what we kind of like to see and stuff like that. Um, do you think if you have the time, you will still try to compete within Lorcana after your experience within the first competitive season? Obviously, like with there being less, it means maybe it's a bit more difficult if those weekends are already occupied with other things, because we know how busy you are anyways, Frank, with all of the magic stuff you do, right? But we would love to see you continue to compete within Lorcana, and I guess in general, are you particularly excited to see what the meta looks like post rotation?
So, well, first off, post rotation, yeah, definitely going to be a deck builder's paradise. So that's going to be exciting to unravel for sure. I look forward to the very first DLCs and competitive events for that reason. I do intend to go to various DLCs this coming season, especially the ones in Europe, because it's just a fun weekend regardless. and perhaps some events abroad as well if I can fit it into the travel schedule. We will see. I I enjoy the game. I enjoy the community, and I don't really want to lose that. I also had just a nice experience, prepping with DKP and Kurt and the world class cards people, and yeah, it'll also be fun to see them at upcoming events, because yeah, I guess the community is the best part. Um, Also, I hope to see you guys at upcoming events. Definitely looking forward to just getting a dinner or drink together, and yeah, that's something I hope to keep doing. Whether or not I'm going to keep qualifying for the World Championships, you can't really go into these tournaments, especially when there's so many strong players with any sort of expectation. But yeah, I'll just give it my best, and we'll see.
Awesome. It would be great, Podcana and Frank Karsten, the world tour for Lorcana. One can dream, right? No, I think myself and Moyen, we've said it on the podcast already. Like, because there are fewer DLCs as well, we are gonna try our best to go to as many as possible. I think primarily, for me at least, Europe, of course, America if I can. Mainly because as well within Europe and America, with the continentals, they are the bigger avenues to be able to qualify directly to like worlds, because with the other areas of the world, of course, as you mentioned, Frank, it's great that they're expanding, but maybe some of the championships are like a little bit smaller, or you really have to perform like super well, like top every single event to kind of carve your way to worlds. So I'm hoping at least that the NA and the EU events will keep us going. And I have to echo what you said. It's just all about community for this game that always keeps me coming back. At least, of course, the actual game itself has to be interesting, but the community for Lorcana is just like no other. And that also actually gets me excited to potentially travel to America for some of the DLCs as well, because uh, I know so many of the European Lorcana community and creators and stuff, and I'd love to get connected with the North American creators and the community a little bit better. But yeah, with that, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode. Frank, thank you so much again for coming onto the podcast. It's always a pleasure. Um, and you're always welcome to come back at any time to kind of talk math and stuff. I'd love if we get a deck similar to Steel Song in set 9, where we get you back on and you really like break down the numbers and like the uninkable count and stuff like that again. That would be pretty cool, because I know that's like what so many people kind of uh, know you from, especially in Lorcana, was at the very start, right? You kind of really broke down the math of Steel Song. So I hope we get a deck like that within set 9, and you get to kind of um, showcase your skills of math all over again. Yeah, if
I
you've
look forward to constructing it.
Awesome. Yeah. If you've any final words, I guess, uh, if you could leave us with some final words of maybe somebody's listening to this, or similar to some people within the comment section there that are maybe aspiring competitive Lorcana players. If you've any words of advice, right, of like what they should maybe be doing to just improve their general Lorcana skills, be that around practice, around maybe who they surround themselves with. Any words of advice would be great.
All right. So for anyone listening who might be, interested in like trying to hit a top finish at an upcoming DLC, how to improve, I can give a couple of pointers. One is to make sure that you play against like better players, and discuss your lines of play during or after the match, because that's the best way to learn. Basically, after every game or even during a game, just ask yourself, hey, like did I quest with everything at the right time? Was this card the right one to play on turn 4? And like practice properly, even do like open hand testing, to just discuss the lines, because I think the tournaments are largely won or lost in the gameplay section. That's the most important thing, and we can all still learn a lot from each other in like perfecting our lines of play in the games. The other thing is, especially if you're looking ahead towards the DLCs after rotation, where all the constructed decks are going to change, and you now have 1 or 2 months to start playing some games, start practicing. Maybe consider focusing on your fundamentals by playing limited, playing some seal deck, because I think it really helped me in my first DLC that I won, because I was familiar with all the ideas of like mulligans, inking, sequencing, combat math, resource exchanges, role assessment, all that. And I got that mainly through playing Seal Deck, where sure you're playing largely with vanilla characters, but it really helps you hone your fundamentals of the game. So if you want to get better at the game and also have fun with like a different experience every time, I'll keep recommending Limited. And maybe the third thing is to just come into events with the right mindset, right? Don't focus too much on what your expectations are or what it may mean to win. Just take good care of yourself. These weekends are going to be exhausting, so sleep well, bring some water and snacks, and just focus on making the best plays every turn of the game, and just enjoying yourself. Don't focus on what your current record is, or like the mistakes that you or your opponent were making, or whether there was like bad luck involved. That's all sort of a distraction. Just focus on having a good time and making the best plays in the game, and then eventually the results will follow.
Amazing. Love to hear it. The one final thing before we close out the podcast, I'm going to start up with Moyen. One card you want to see reprinted within set 9. Take it away.
One card I want to see reprinted.
Yes.
Um.
Putting you on the spot right now.
Yeah. Why are you doing this to me?
I mean, I
Um.
could start us off with maybe an interesting one that I would like to see return, and my thought process around this is I would like to see this card come back because I thought maybe it has some interesting potential, and with maybe the removal of some of the Ruby cards that have strength based removal, like Brawl or Big Sisu potentially if these are leaving. Um, I kind of liked the Amber Perdita. I think it's the 6 cost uninkable. I think it's a 6 cost uninkable 1/6. But I think it's when you play and when you quest, you get a 2 drop back from your discard. I just kind of liked that card. I remember playing it within Amber Ruby a little while ago, and I just felt like it was because it was a 1/6. There was so much strength based removal that absolutely destroyed it. So that's an example of a card that maybe has some potential in future sets, but maybe it doesn't have that much potential, right? It could be anything. If you're struggling, I'll pose the same question to Frank as well. Although Frank might just say he wants Ariel back, right?
Well, I would actually say Rapunzel gifted with healing.
Mm.
Also a card I've played a lot of that I would love to see return to give Ember some much needed card draw as well. But perhaps the main reason why I would like to have her back is because she set up all these interesting gameplay situations, potential Rapunzel traps where your opponent leaves their 3/3 exerted, and then you can get in and like draw 3 cards out of nowhere. It's for that reason sort of a skill intensive card, both playing with it and playing against it, that led to all kinds of unique and interesting lines of play. And a card that opens up that many strategic possibilities is, I think, the card we want to retain in the game.
Okay, I'll take Hydra, which is the
Okay.
uninkable 6 drop.
Okay.
Um.
What's it even do
Kind of
again?
along.
I can't even remember.
Okay, that's the disrespect. So it's a 6 cost 6/5. The quests for 2 uninkable in Ruby, and it says when when it's dealt damage, you get to deal that much damage to chosen character. And I think it can do a similar thing in like make up for some awkward board states that are like a little bit harder to analyze. But also in part I'm picking it because like when it came out, I actually quite liked the look of the card, but then it kind of went into this phase where if a 6-cost uninkable didn't have an on the play, you couldn't really play it. And I would like for this card to actually see some more play than it did in these first few sets.
I love how you guys picked like very reasonable, like Rapunzel is like such a core to like learning Lorcana and the general skill of like should I leave something exerted or should I leave something ready, and the idea of Hydra having all, and I'm just like, yeah, this like legendary card that was kind of cool. Like your guys' answers are so, they make so much sense, which I love. Yeah, cool. Well, yep, that's pretty much the end of the podcast. Again, Frank, thank you so much for joining us. The number one thing that you guys can do is if you like the podcast, you can leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your local podcast platform. There's a video version of this available over on youtube.com/@Podcana podcast. Hit the subscribe while you're there. Twitters are @Kawatek_CG, @Karsten_Frank, and @Moyen_HS. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.